HOA patrol showed up to find my farm. I'm not in their HOA told them to get off my land. Imagine waking up to strangers on your private property, trying to tell you how to run your life, when you don't even belong to their organization. How would you respond? The morning sun was just beginning to warm the fertile fields of Red Clover Farm, casting long shadows from the old barn. The scent of damp earth and blooming wildflowers filled the air, a familiar comfort. My family has owned this land for 5 generations, a sprawling acreage that predates the very concept of suburban housing developments. I, Jeremiah Jim Finch, a third-generation farmer, found my peace and purpose in this land, coaxing life from its soil. Our property line was clearly marked by an ancient stone wall, a boundary acknowledged by every local for a century. Then came Karen. Not a gentle knock, but the crunch of tires on my gravel driveway, followed by the sight of a gleaming white SUV emblazoned with Maplewood Estates HOA Patrol. Out stepped Karen Albright, clipboard in hand, a look of utter disdain plastered across her perfectly made-up face. She wasn't just a busybody. She was the self-appointed, iron-fisted head of the Maplewood Estates Homeowners Association, a sprawling development that had encroached upon our rural edges over the last decade. "Mr. Finch," she announced, her voice piercing the morning quiet, "we have received, shall we say, numerous complaints regarding your disorderly property. The livestock odors are offensive. Your crops obstruct the view from our residents' luxury homes. And that old barn is a deplorable eyesore. It devalues our community. We're issuing you a cease and desist. You are in direct violation of Maplewood Estates HOA guidelines for rural encroachment and aesthetic harmony. You will immediately remove all livestock, cease farming within 100 feet of our boundary, and repaint that barn a more appropriate, muted color." The main conflict, audacious and deeply insulting, was laid bare. Karen, armed with absurd, subjective HOA rules and a blind sense of entitlement, was demanding I dismantle my ancestral livelihood, my home, my very way of life. Her attitude reeked of blatant contempt for rural life, a belief that her suburban standards superseded centuries of tradition and land rights. She truly believed her personal preferences granted her authority over my private property, a belief so twisted it was almost comical. I stared at her, dumbfounded, then my jaw tightened. "Ms. Albright," I said, my voice low and steady, "you are mistaken. This is Red Clover Farm. We are not, nor have we ever been, part of the Maplewood Estates HOA. Your jurisdiction ends at that stone wall." I gestured to the ancient boundary, overgrown with ivy, but undeniably there. I even offered to show her the property deeds, which clearly predated the HOA by decades. Karen, however, merely scoffed, crossing her arms. "Mr. Finch, that's simply a technicality. Your property adjoins ours, and therefore, it affects our property values and lifestyle. We have legal precedent for nuisance abatement from neighboring properties. You have 48 hours to comply, or face escalating fines of $5,000 per day and legal action to force compliance. This is a matter of maintaining the quality of life in Maplewood Estates." Her tone was condescending, her eyes holding a glint of predatory satisfaction, as if she relished the thought of crushing my humble farm under the weight of her perceived authority. The fines began, accumulating at an astronomical rate, arriving via certified mail despite my repeated insistence that I was not part of her HOA. Karen openly boasted to her residents about how she was cleaning up the rural fringe. Then, her pettiness escalated to an appalling act of sabotage. One afternoon, under the guise of boundary surveying for a new HOA walking trail, she sent a crew onto my land. They didn't just survey. They deliberately cut the main irrigation lines that fed my nascent hay crop, a critical feed source for my cattle. They also scattered a noxious weed seed mixed directly into my pasture, clearly designed to destroy my grazing land and contaminate my organic produce. It was an act of pure, malicious intent, aiming to cripple my farm and force me off my land. Right after discovering the severed irrigation lines and the poisoned pasture, a crucial twist unfolded from an unexpected source. My neighbor, Old Man Hemlock, a reclusive former land surveyor who lived up in the hills, happened to be on his weekly walk, armed with his worn-out metal detector. He saw Karen's crew. He shuffled over, his eyes twinkling. Jim, saw those city slickers messing with your water lines. Noticed them dropping some seeds too. Had my old drone up, doing some aerial mapping for my own amusement. Got the whole thing, plain as day. She was directing them herself. His drone footage, surprisingly high resolution, captured Karen Albright, clearly instructing the crew to cut the lines and scatter the seeds, her face contorted in a sneer of triumph. The larger consequence of Karen's actions became terrifyingly clear. My hay crop wasn't just feed for my cattle. A significant portion of it was sold to a local co-op that supplied organic, sustainable produce to school lunch programs across the entire county. Karen's sabotage, aimed at my farm, now directly threatened to disrupt the nutritional well-being of thousands of underprivileged children, forcing the schools to source from less healthy, factory-farmed options. Her petty land grab was now a direct assault on public health and the welfare of children, elevating my personal grievance to a matter of profound civic concern. Armed with Old Man Hemlock's irrefutable drone footage and the support of the furious co-op director, I called an emergency town hall meeting, inviting not just my rural neighbors, but also the residents of Maplewood Estates. Karen, radiating confidence, arrived late, flanked by her smirking HOA lawyers, clearly believing this was just another nuisance to be dealt with. "Mr. Finch," she purred, taking the stage. "I trust you've finally come to your senses and are prepared to discuss your overdue fines." She chuckled, a dry, dismissive sound. "No, Karen," I retorted, my voice steady and unwavering. "I've come to expose your criminal acts and your shocking disregard for the well-being of this community's children." I projected Old Man Hemlock's drone footage onto the large screen. The room erupted in shocked murmurs as Karen's direct involvement in the sabotage, her malicious instructions, and the scattering of weed seeds were revealed. Karen's face contorted in disbelief, then pure, unadulterated rage. "That's manipulated. That old man is a recluse. His evidence is worthless. This is a malicious attack on my character and the HOA's integrity," she shrieked, desperately trying to manipulate the situation, her voice shrill and breaking. She started pointing fingers, trying to turn the crowd against me and Old Man Hemlock. Just as her tirade reached its peak, the doors to the community center swung open, and strode not just Sheriff Thompson, but also a stern-faced agent from the State Department of Agriculture, and, surprisingly, the superintendent of the county school board, looking absolutely furious. The superintendent spoke first, her voice cold and cutting. "Ms. Albright, your actions have directly threatened the nutritional security of thousands of school children across our county. This is not merely property damage. This is an attack on public health. We will be pursuing every legal avenue available." The State Department of Agriculture agent stepped forward. "And Ms. Albright, we've also been investigating reports of widespread fraudulent land acquisitions and tax evasion within the Maplewood Estates development. Specifically, several common areas and green spaces within your HOA appear to have been illegally rezoned and then sold off to shell companies, with vast sums of money disappearing into offshore accounts. Your name, Ms. Albright, has appeared on every single one of those transactions." A nervous murmur rippled through the room as an HOA lawyer, clearly terrified, stammered to Sheriff Thompson. She told us those were strategic land investments for future development. We had no idea the money was going to her family offshore." It was a chilling revelation. Karen wasn't just a busybody. She was systematically using her HOA power to seize and illegally sell off common lands for her own profit, laundering millions through fraudulent companies, with the aesthetic standards as a smokescreen to distract from her illicit activities. The fines levied against me were simply part of a larger pattern of extortion. A past incident, whispered among the older residents, revealed that Karen had been previously involved in a land-grabbing scandal in another state, using her position on a zoning committee to acquire public lands for private development. The consequences for Karen Albright were immediate and utterly devastating. She was arrested by Sheriff Thompson on multiple charges, including felony vandalism, agricultural sabotage, and later, as the full extent of the fraud was uncovered, for massive embezzlement, wire fraud, racketeering, and environmental crimes. The Maplewood Estates HOA was placed under immediate state and federal investigation, its assets frozen, and a full forensic audit exposed tens of millions in stolen funds, a systematic scheme orchestrated by Karen and her network. Her carefully cultivated image as the benevolent community leader shattered into irreparable pieces. The residents she had once intimidated now turned on her, furious at being manipulated and exploited, their common land stolen, their property values plummeted by the scandal. Her social circles, built on an illusion of wealth and influence, abandoned her completely, unwilling to be associated with such public disgrace. Her vast real estate holdings, her fortune, her status, her perceived power all confiscated as part of the ongoing investigation and subsequent lawsuits. She lost everything: her freedom, her fortune, and her reputation. The ultimate irony was that her petty attempt to control my farm led to the complete unraveling of her vast, illegal enterprise. As for Red Clover Farm, it thrived. The hay crop recovered, and the farm became a symbol of resilience. That evening, as the sun set over my fields, I watched as a procession of cars from Maplewood Estates drove slowly past my farm. They weren't there to complain. They were there to buy fresh produce directly from my roadside stand, a silent show of support. And the HOA Patrol SUV? It was impounded, auctioned off to pay for Karen's legal fees, a symbolic victory. I felt a deep sense of satisfaction, a quiet triumph of tradition and integrity over arrogance and greed. What's your take on this? When someone attempts to usurp authority and destroy a livelihood for personal gain, does their complete downfall truly serve justice? Or is there a point where the consequences become too extreme?